This woman was in prison for 50 years, okay? The nerve of him to ask her, the last known person to be seen with his son, did you kill my son? The pretenses behind her attempting to clean any part of this crime scene. She had been accused of killing her husband by way of poisoning him.
Yeah, after that I get out, I walk home.
That confession was a joke. I mean, he could have said anything. He could have said anything, and there would have been no proof. Every time we see something like this, where it's like, there's no care or like regard, why would you cover for this man and allow him to leave the scene of the crime and act like he was never there?
A depraved act of violence which deprived a kind, talented, loved and admired young woman of her life has since united the country in grief and in support. The crime, I think, has also asked questions of ourselves and of our society. It has questioned our attitudes, and particularly our attitudes towards women. And it has questioned, too, our values and our morality. Whether these questions will be addressed or passed over remains to be seen. It's up to ourselves. But we cannot allow such violence and disregard for both human life and bodily integrity to take root in our time and culture. Pope Francis, in his homily for New Year's Day just 2 weeks ago, said that violence against women is an insult to God.
Hey guys, what's up? It's your girl Kelly. We're back with another video. Please subscribe to the channel, guys, if you're into true crime stories, news, politics, and so much more. Please hit that subscribe button and join me. I would very much appreciate it. And if you guys are returning listeners or viewers, thank you as always for being a friend. I appreciate you guys so much. And please interact with the video. Like it if you like it. Give me a comment. Let me know what you think about the topic and about this case that we're about to talk about. And make sure you guys are hitting the bell. It really does help me out whenever y'all interact. And I always look forward to hearing from you guys. So thank y'all in advance. So guys, if you have been here on my channel before, also you might have noticed the intro. I switched it up a little bit for the true crime stories, just to kind of give it a little bit of a different feel than my normal intro. So let me know what you guys think about that as well. Comment, let me know if you guys think it's good, if you think it's bad, whatever. Let me know your thoughts, and let's get into this case without further ado. This took place in Ireland. This crime happened on January 12th, 2022, and it tragically took the life of Ashling Murphy, who at the time was a 23-year-old primary school teacher in the town of Tullamore. So on that Wednesday afternoon, Ashling decided that she was going to be going for a jog. This was in broad daylight, something that she had done many times before and she felt comfortable doing. So on that day, she set out for one of her usual spots, which was at the Grand Canal, which had a jogging path that cut through the canal in Tullamore. But unbeknownst to her, it would be the last time that she would actually head out for this reason, and unsuspectingly walking into a tragic fate where she would meet a man who she had never met before, who she had no previous knowledge of, a completely random stranger who set out that day himself with the purpose and the intention to target a woman armed with a knife. He set out on his bicycle and began to stalk multiple women, where he was caught on CCTV footage all throughout the town, riding his bike, trying to scope out a victim that he could carry out this despicable crime on. And it just so happened that he, unfortunately, would meet Ashling Murphy. So, according to her family, Ashling was a humble, selfless, musical person who was one in a million. She was a school teacher, so Ashling was a part of a very loving and beautiful family of 5. You can see in this photo here, her mother Kathleen, her father Raymond, her brother Cathal, and her sister Amy. And she had just recently graduated from the Sacred Heart School in Tullamore, and at the time was teaching at a nearby Duro National School. Ashling also had a loving boyfriend, Ryan Casey, who was very vocal throughout this entire process and would become a pivotal part of this case and the quest to seek justice for Ashling. There were multiple witnesses actually that ended up seeing Ashling being attacked. As it turns out, the perpetrator who killed Ashling had confronted her on the trail that she was jogging on and had gotten off of his bike and pushed her into a hedge or a bush that was nearby. And a couple women actually ended up happening onto this scene and went to investigate. Unfortunately, in Europe and places like this, trial footage is not available. You have to pretty much be there if you want to see what's going on in the courtroom. But we do have some secondhand reporting that was done, and they're going to discuss a little bit of the evidence and what the scene was that these two women came upon.
So the first thing that caught her eye, as she explained to the court, was a luminous green bike. So she saw this luminous green bike pushed down in the hedgerow, basically, and she thought that it looked very unusual. She thought it was a nice bike, and it was strange that someone would leave such a nice bike there. The quote from her I have here, she said, "Jesus, that's a really nice bike. I wonder what it's doing there." But they continued on their run after that. It didn't startle them as such to the point where they stopped at that point.
Yeah, and then I believe her friend Aoife Marion, who's going to give evidence, you'll be talking about her in a while, but Miss Marion stepped forward when they heard a bit of rustling in the undergrowth beside the bike.
Yeah, so as Ms. Stack explained, they heard this rustling in the hedgerow. She described it as quite distinctive. And so they moved to have a closer look, herself and Aoife. And she said that it wasn't like an animal. It was quite distinct. It was loud. It was like somebody was struggling, to be honest, she said. And she thought, I suppose naturally the assumption, you see the bike, they said they thought at that point that someone had fallen off the bike and gone into the brambles. So Ms. Stack then described what she saw. So she went and she had a look in, and she told the court that she could see the back of a jacket. A navy kind of bomber type jacket, padded jacket, and she shouted in something to the effect of "Are you okay?" To the man. She could only see the back of him, as she said. And then this person turned around, and she said she could see his face, couldn't see his hands, but she said he was holding someone down. He turned around, and I said, "What are you doing?" And at that point, he spoke to me, and he said, "Get away." She said this man's teeth were gritted, and he had kind of a facial expression that was quite terrifying, she said. She was asked then by the prosecuting counsel, Miss Anne-Marie Lawler, just to kind of give a description of the man that she saw. And she said that he had stubble on his face, appeared to have a receding hairline, or as though he had shaved his head. And that she remembered his eyebrows were quite distinct, she said. Go ahead.
Sorry, and then I think her next evidence would be that she could see what she said. She saw a woman underneath the man. I think that was the word she used.
Yes, she could see a woman lying down underneath him, and he appeared to be on top of her. He said he was crouched over her, holding her down. His teeth were kind of grinding as he shouted, "Get away!" to her. But she could clearly see a second person underneath. She saw her thighs, she said. And she would go on to tell the court that she could see this lady, who the court accepts was, of course, Ashling Murphy. She could see her legs kicking in a scissors-like motion. And she appeared to be struggling, she said.
And that word, she did use the word scissors, which would convey sort of activity, very, very actively trying to move from the scene where she was.
Yeah, so she said, I just have the quote here, she said her legs, she was kicking so hard, she was crying out for help. She was kicking like a scissors. She was moving with whatever part of her body that she could. At that point, when I saw what was happening, I thought, this guy is going to rape her, to be honest. I said to him, I have my phone with me, I'm calling the guards, get off her. Now, Ms. Stack gave evidence in court that she actually didn't have her phone on her at this point in time, so she told the man this in the hope that it would in some way startle him, but she didn't have a phone on us. She then said that this man lunged. He kind of lunged as if to frighten us. She said the whole incident lasted about 30 seconds and they just ran as fast as they could to get help. And they ran in the opposite direction towards the bridge.
So I understand that she would have come across a man in a high-vis jacket. It was the first person that she came in contact with, but there wasn't a very fast reaction from that man. So then she went and did she go to a house? Was it the house next door? Did she meet two other men?
Yeah, so they had an interaction with two men at the bridge in which they asked for help. We'll come back to that because there were evidence from both of those men. And they looked for help. They tried to contact the guards. They were unable to do so. So herself and Aoife both split. And she went to a house of someone that she knew, a relative of a relative. And Aoife went to another house. Aoife was actually the one that managed to dial 999, I believe, first and get onto the guards. So she went.
And this would turn out to be devastating in the consequence in regards to the delay in which they were able to provide assistance to Ashling Murphy, because obviously in the time that it took for them to run and seek help, it was already too late at that point. And Ashling had been at one point strangled and then stabbed 11 times right there in broad daylight on a jogging path in the middle of Ireland by a man on a bike who then made his getaway and was captured on CCTV footage running and attempting to hide from capture and leaving Ashling Murphy there to die on the ground. Obviously, these were two women who were in fear for their own lives. I don't fault them for that, but it's just tragic. I could not imagine having to leave a woman there being attacked by a man so completely helpless in your own regard. But she obviously extremely vulnerable, extremely dire situation in which she probably heard these women come up on this scene, probably for a split second had hope and had some sort of glimmer that she might be saved and that she might walk away from this with her life. And it's just sad to think that that was not the case. And I couldn't imagine being in those two women's shoes, having to leave another woman there like that, because I don't know how I'd be able to live with myself. I don't fault them for this. This is, a scary situation, but this is also a reason why women need to arm themselves, because at the end of the day, when a woman is being attacked by a man, even if you have multiple different women against one man, it's still almost impossible if the man has the willpower, the strength, and the motivation to commit a violent crime against any of you or all of you. It is more likely than not that he would be able to carry that out unless one of those ladies had some sort of self-protection, some sort of self-defense weapon in order to save themselves and potentially save another life. And it's just sad because this is going on in Europe with a lot more frequency than we've ever seen before. And a huge part of that is the insane flow of migrants who have entered Europe, who have entered the Western countries, who have entered our country, committing violent acts, some of which likes that these countries have never even seen before. And a long time ago, they passed laws and they kind of developed this culture of not having firearms because they didn't need them. They were homogenous countries for the most part, and there wasn't that much violent crime. But now the dynamics are changing, and it's just tragic to see the consequences of that, and to see that Ashling Murphy had to lose her life over something so senseless, something so random. Like I said, this man didn't even know her.
No, Enna Malloy was a cyclist who was actually told by the waterways workers to go down. He was able to get down there quicker, and he was down there with another cyclist, a Polish individual who gave evidence yesterday. So those two cyclists were there, and they told Garda Dunn to have a look in, go into the ditch there and see what he could see. Garda Dunn said that he went into the ditch. He actually said that when he got out of the car, he could already see straight away that there was a body in the ditch. He said it was maybe 5 or 6 feet down in the ditch. And he described the area, it was kind of all overgrown and thick, and that there were brambles. And he said the body to him looked to be female. She was lying with her head. So we've heard evidence of this from a couple of witnesses already, just in the position of Miss Murphy's body, in that her feet were facing in one direction towards Stigby's Bridge, and her head was facing then towards the Tullamore direction. She appeared to be face up, he said, and we've heard the description of Miss Murphy's hair being over her face. He was the first Garda on the scene.
And the reference was made yesterday to the pink woolly hat close to the body, and he also says today he would have seen that pink woolly hat.
Yes, he confirms that he could see a pink woolly hat close to the body, and this was just before he put on disposable gloves, he said. And he said that Miss Murphy was wearing kind of a jacket zipped right up to her neck, and he described how he unzipped that jacket so that he could start performing CPR and chest compressions. And he said he would have felt for a pulse at that point in time. He said that he couldn't feel a pulse, and that is what he said in his statement, that he did not detect a pulse, but he would say to the court that if there was a pulse, it would have been a very faint one.
And he also gave an indication of how long he and his colleague performed CPR on Miss Murphy.
Yeah, so both him and his colleague Garda Hunter, as I said, they were the first two Gardaí there, and between the two of them, they alternated in the chest compressions and CPR for a period of about 10 to 15 minutes. He did that, and he also just described to the court how Miss Murphy looked. And again, I would just warn people, we are going to go into some detail here that the court heard that is graphic in nature. So he said that Miss Murphy, her face, there was a lot of blood Her hair was matted. Some of it was kind of caught in the briars. He said you couldn't see her face, but there was an awful lot of blood. It was impossible to tell where it was coming from at the time. Following that effort to perform CPR, paramedics arrived, the ambulance arrived, and himself and his colleague and another paramedic lifted Miss Murphy's body out of the ditch and lay her body there on the tarmac, on the actual path itself. And then the paramedics did their work. They did CPR, they attached a defibrillator, but unfortunately there was nothing that they could do. They found no signs of life and they stopped working on the body. We would hear evidence then later on. It was sometime closer to 6 o'clock in the evening when Miss Murphy was officially declared deceased.
And
so we then
he could have, sorry, he get evidence that he could see visible wounds on Miss Murphy, and he did say that there was as you say, there was a significant amount of blood. He also saw that there was a phone in her jacket pocket and keys to a safe car.
Yes. Now these are things that Detective Gratidon noticed when Miss Murphy's body was brought out onto the tarmac. So it's not something he could see in the brambles itself in the ditch, but he said he could see holes, puncture wounds in her neck. He said he could see about 4 or 5, but there was so much blood there he couldn't see everything. As you mentioned, he said he saw a phone in her jacket, keys to a Seat car, and a necklace around her neck, which actually had the word Ashling on it.
So as Ashling's body was being pulled from a ditch and multiple attempts to revive her and to save her life were being made, the perpetrator of this crime, who is 33-year-old Joseph Puska, who is an immigrant to Ireland, not a native-born Irishman. He is Slovakian, and he made his getaway. He ended up leaving his bike there. He arrived and was seen on CCTV footage previously in the day on this bike, but ended up panicking and making his getaway on foot. So he ended up hiding in a ditch for several hours as the guard were making these life-saving attempts, and then went on to try to seek out the man who was responsible for this heinous act. And since the two women had seen him, there was luckily an eyewitness who could provide some detail about the appearance of this man. After a couple hours of hiding, and after it got dark, he emerged from the ditch in which that he was hiding, and he ended up walking to a nearby house and getting a ride to his home in Mucklaw, and there he burned his clothes that he was wearing while he attacked Ashling. So after he was done trying to hide the evidence of his crime, he got a ride into Dublin, and CCTV footage caught him there. He had changed his clothes and tried to change his appearance by shaving his face, and he was seen walking around without any sign of an injury. But he wasn't done there. This wannabe genius, this wannabe criminal mastermind who was an absolute idiot and just psychopathic murderer, ended up concocting a plan about being stabbed in Blanchardstown, and ended up giving himself an injury by stabbing himself in the abdomen in order to establish some sort of alibi, or in order to give an alternative story just in case he was going to be questioned by the police, which he absolutely was. They were actively looking for him, and this would give him some sort of out in order to be able to spin a different narrative than the one that was actually true. So he was brought to St. James Hospital, and the Irish guard there ended up questioning him to see what had happened and doubted his story, and ended up getting in touch with the investigators in Tullamore who were trying to figure out what had happened to Ashling and had already attempted to locate someone, and one of the witnesses had already picked the wrong person out of a lineup when they got a huge break in the case after the suspicions arose at the hospital. And I guess in a panic, or in just knowing that he was caught, guilty conscience, whatever you want to call it, he ended up confessing to the crime and told multiple guards that he was the murderer who had killed Ashling Murphy. He would later go on to use this story at his trial, where he, although confessing multiple times, being caught on CCTV footage as well as by a witness, leaving his DNA on the bicycle that he had abandoned at the crime scene, he still managed to muster up the audacity to plead not guilty to this crime, and to this day maintaining his quote-unquote innocence, saying that he was confronting another person who had attacked Ashling and was trying to save her life, in which He was then hurt, thus explaining the abdomen injury that he had given to himself. But no one would end up buying into this story, as it made no sense, and the evidence that was stacked up against him in this case were overwhelming. So he was arrested in January of 2022, just a few days after the murder, and ended up going to trial in November of 2023, just of this past year, and he was eventually found guilty of this crime. The jury heard the evidence, saw the CCTV footage, and he took the stand in his defense, in which he was unconvincing and unable to prove to the jury that he had nothing to do with Ashling's death.
I'd just like to take this opportunity on behalf of our God and Father to note the conviction today for the murder of Ashling Murphy and the life sentence that has been put forth in Joseph Pushka. Ashling, a national school teacher, was out for a walk after work when she was attacked and murdered by Mr. Pushka. The response to the crime shocked the nation. I want to pay tribute to all the members of IMMIGRATED involved in this investigation, and in particular, my colleagues at Tullamore Garda Station where the investigation was led. The investigation team were professional and steadfast in their determination that the person responsible for Ashling's murder will be brought to justice. I also, most importantly, want to thank the community of Tullamore, a compassionate, kind, resilient and generous community. They were of invaluable assistance to Garda Síochána throughout this investigation, providing us in particular with access to CCTV, which is instrumental in building the case against Mr. Pushka and to achieving a successful prosecution. The community also has and continues to support Ashling's family. Finally, I would like to pay tribute to Ashling's family, her mother Kathy, her father Ray, her sister Amy, brother Todd, and indeed her boyfriend Ryan. The courage, the dignity, the resilience and the strength that they have shown during this ordeal has been exemplary. I want to assure them on behalf of Garda Síochána that we will continue to support them going forward and give them all the support we can where necessary. Finally, I would like to repeat the family's request for privacy around this time as they continue to process the enormity of the murder and the loss of Ashling. Thank you very much.
So it was also said that during the trial he was indignant the entire time. There were times where he was seen smiling throughout some of the evidence, ultimately showing the family in the court that he had little remorse and that he was quite content with himself, which I think helped to solidify conviction in this case. But the evidence was completely overwhelming, and ultimately it was impossible to ignore what was obvious and what the evidence was showing, and that was Joseph Pushka was guilty of killing Ashling Murphy. And this case devastated and really shook the country of Ireland as a whole, and even the UK as a whole. People have been very affected by this case, and it's because of the shock and the actual violence that has been going on against women. A lot of it at the hands of migrants, illegal immigrants, that have infiltrated their countries. And people are just now starting to see some of the horrific fruits of those circumstances, which will continue to reverberate and which will continue to happen unless they take swift action. So I think it's a lesson. I think it is also a tragic situation in which a country that's not used to dealing with such violence has been shook to its core. And not only that, this was a beautiful young woman who had her whole life ahead of her. She had a boyfriend who loved her very much, and we're going to listen to his victim impact statement here in a second because I thought it was very powerful, and it was one of the only pieces of testimony that I could find online from this trial, and it was just completely gut-wrenching to know that so many people loved this young lady. So many people had plans with her in their future, and that was all ripped away by this horrific man who had no connections to this woman, no reason, no justification to take her life other than sheer curiosity, sexual deviancy. Who knows what his motives were. No matter what they were completely unjustified and they were completely inhumane. And it is a net positive that he is removed now off of the streets and is going to be serving a life sentence so that he cannot hurt anyone else. Okay guys, so now we're going to listen to the victim impact statement that was given by her boyfriend, in which he completely destroyed this man in open court in a very brave, honest, and condemning the acts in the senseless murder of his beloved girlfriend, Ashling Murphy. May she rest in peace.
Ashling and I first met on the 6th of September in 2013 at a local rugby club disco in Tullamore, which was 10 years ago this year. We were both just 15 years old, and it was our first time to ever meet, even though we only lived 7 or 8 minutes up the road from each other. I knew even way back then that there was just something so special about her. Her beautiful and warm personality, coupled with that big, distinctive and wholesome smile that I grew to love more and more as time went on. The very next day, I just couldn't resist. I felt that there was genuinely something so special about her, so I just had to text her. So, from that day forward, we started texting each other, and after a number of weeks and meetups, we were in a relationship together. We simply couldn't get enough of each other. I instantly loved her family. They were, and still are to this day, the most warm, wholesome and welcoming family you can ever meet. They symbolise absolutely everything that is great about Irish society. Good, honest, kind and hard-working people that I am so lucky to call family. Although I found out on December 18th of 2016, while at my house, that we weren't officially going out, as I had never officially asked her to be my girlfriend. So it was on that night that I officially asked Ashling to be my girlfriend, and this became our anniversary date, which worked out perfectly as I had a surprise gift for Christmas to give her that night, which was the first ever gift I got her. A rose gold Daniel Wellington watch with a brown leather strap that I knew she really wanted for a long time. A watch that her mother Kathleen now wears every day. What we had was very, very special, and we both knew it. Honestly, Ashling knew me better than I knew myself. She could literally read me like a book, knew exactly what mood I was in, and knew exactly what to do or say to cheer me up, and I know for a fact this went both ways. In the entire time that we were together, we never had one single disagreement or one single little argument, which is something I loved about our relationship. We were both such planners. We had made so many plans together, such as moving in together, starting our careers, travelling the world together, building a house together, having kids and starting a family, proposing to her, getting married. The list goes on and on. We had planned to move to Galway in late summer of 2022. After this, we had plans to move to Dubai for 1 to 2 years, as it was always Ashling's dream for as long as I've known her to teach in Dubai. After Dubai was going to be coming home and building our house, which we already had spent so many hours designing together over the Christmas of 2021. We often discussed how many kids we'd love to have, and how they'd be mighty little hurlers or camogie players, and even better musicians. One thing Ashling used to always say to me was that if we were lucky enough to have a little boy someday, she always wanted to call him Rian, which is Irish for Ryan. In terms of marriage, there was just no question. I was going to marry the girl of my dreams and my soulmate. I knew the exact type of engagement ring she'd love. We would talk about the wedding day itself, what types of dress she'd love, how it would be in Mount Bola's church, where the reception would be, just everything, even down to what our wedding song would be, which Ashling always wanted to be, Can You Feel the Love Tonight from The Lion King. When I used to drive home from her house, I always, every time, without fail, would say out loud in the car, I can't wait to marry that girl someday. I would have married Ashling a long time ago if I could, and I wish I did. But last year, on the 12th of January, I lost so much more than my girlfriend. I lost my partner in life, my closest friend, my best friend. The privilege of marrying into the Murphy and Leonard family, a role model for my little sister, future grandchildren for my parents and Ashling's parents, and great-grandchildren for my grandparents. Everything that I ever wanted in life, every single plan that I had in my life is now gone and cannot be brought back. Ashling was simply everything to me, and this is what I've lost. I never knew that there was a pain as severe and long-lasting as the physical and emotional pain that comes with losing the most important person in your life. It just doesn't make any sense to me how somebody who is just so insignificant, worthless, lowest of the low, burden to society and overall a waste of life, can completely and permanently destroy so many people's lives by taking the life of a person who is the complete opposite. A life with meaning, a life with dreams, a life of love and compassion, respect. A person who contributed to society in the best ways possible. It just sickens me to the core that someone can come to this country, be fully supported in terms of social housing, social welfare and free medical care for over 10 years. Over 10 years. Never hold down a legitimate job and never once contribute to society in any way, shape or form, can commit such a horrendous, evil act of incomprehensible violence on such a beautiful, loving and talented person who in fact worked for the state, educating the next generation and represented everything that is good about Irish society. I feel like this country is no longer the country that Ashling and I grew up in, and has officially lost its innocence when a crime of this magnitude can be perpetrated in broad daylight. This country needs to wake up. This time, things have to change. We have to once and for all start putting the safety of not only Irish people, but everybody in this country who works hard, pays taxes, raises families and overall contributes to society first. We don't want to see any other family in this country go through what we have gone through and are continuing to go through. I don't think we will ever truly know why this evil, evil description of a human being decided to take our Ashling from us.
You have no idea what you have stolen from us. You have no idea how much Ashling meant to us. You have no idea of the love we had for each other. Because of you, I've lost my Ashling. Because of you, I've lost everything I've ever wanted in life. Because of you, I'll never get to marry my soulmate. Because of you, I will never hear her voice again. Because of you, I will never see her smile again. Because of you, I will have to somehow carry on without her. Because of you, I will have to remember her longer than I have known her. I don't care where you end up or happens to you after today, but you smirked, you smiled, and you showed zero remorse throughout this trial, which sums up who you really are. The epitome of pure evil, but one thing is for sure, you will never ever harm or touch another woman ever again, and when your day of reckoning comes, may you be in hell a whole half hour before God even knows you're dead.
Oh my goodness, that last line though. God bless that man. My goodness, what a powerful statement he made to that court. And there was some controversy over this. From what I understand, the courts tried to silence him, tried to cut off the interpretation because this illegal immigrant, this invader, actually didn't speak English very well, so he had to have a translator. Another burden on their society, just to add salt to the wound. But how powerful, and for them to try to silence him, and for there to be blowback on his statement, instead of people being angry at the killer of this beautiful, innocent young woman, there was people who had the audacity to speak out and fix their mouths, to say that he was wrong in his speech and that he was too forceful or he was too mean with his words, instead of applauding him for what he said. Because, I mean, my goodness, what a heartbreaking and touching statement that was. And I applaud him. Everything he said was absolutely true. And he's a better person than I would have been, because that, in my opinion, could have gone even further. I mean, he could have said a lot more, if you ask me. I'm so glad that he was able to get this statement across, and that he said what he said in such a powerful way and impactful way that I think not only did it make an impression onto the court, but obviously made an impression onto so many other people, because his victim impact statement did go absolutely viral, and many people are talking about it now, and it's going to bring hopefully, conversation to this dire situation that multiple Western countries now face, and that is having these migrants, these illegal migrants or legal migrants, whatever the case may be, having people who you invite into your society or just allow them into your society that are not a part of your culture. They have no ties to your land. They have no ties to your people. And yet they milk the systems in which they live. They don't make any sort of meaningful contributions. And then not only do they just take from the countries in which they refuse to assimilate to in the form of financial gain for themselves, they take the life of native-born citizens, people who have ties, people who have families, people who have futures. It's just an absolute travesty, is an absolute devastating turn of events that I fear we're going to be seeing more and more of, as this horrific trend of immigration continues. And it's not just illegal immigration either. It's the crisis of morality also that is causing these issues, that is causing people to become disturbed in such a way that they are committing crimes like these, where a person who, and this man didn't even have a criminal record as far as the police could determine. He didn't have one in his home country, and he didn't have one there in Ireland. It's like he just woke up one day and decided that he was going to kill a completely random, innocent woman. And that's exactly what he did. So, I mean, bravo again to the boyfriend of Ashling, Murphy, who gave her a voice in her final hours, after her death, when she was no longer able to speak. He powerfully and righteously gave her the voice that she deserves, gave her the final say that she deserves, and was able to articulate such a powerful statement that will hopefully haunt this piece of shit in his last and final days. And I hope that he never sees the light of day again. I hope he has to spend the rest of his life in prison. I know in Europe there's oftentimes, if you get sentenced to a life sentence, usually it's not more than 20 years. And I really hope that's not going to be the case for this scumbag, this piece of shit human being who did something so horrendous that, people like this don't deserve to get their freedom back. So I want to know what you guys think, though, about this case. Had y'all heard of this? And what are your thoughts on Ashling Murphy and her tragic death? Let me know in the comments, guys. Please like the video. If you liked it and you want to see more content like this, please subscribe to my channel, guys. I would very much appreciate that. And y'all stay safe out there. And until next time, I will see you guys later. Bye. This woman was in prison for 50 years, okay? The nerve of him to ask her, the last known person to be seen with his son, did you kill my son? The pretenses behind her attempting to clean any part of this crime scene. She had been accused of killing her husband by way of poisoning him.
Yeah, after that I get out, I walk home.
That confession was a joke. I mean, he could have said anything. He could have said anything, and there would have been no proof. Every time we see something like this, where it's like, there's no care or regard, why would you cover for this man and allow him to leave the scene of the crime and act like he was never there?